Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Fola. In today's video, I'll be sharing with you how to sew this beautiful dress. It's a gathered dress with a basque effect. In the last video, I shared with you the drafting process. I showed you how you can draft this dress. If you are yet to watch the drafting video, I'm going to drop the link in the description box below so you can check that out before watching this one. So let's get started. I've gone ahead to transfer my pattern to fabric and I added the necessary seam allowance. So my center front is on fold and I added ½ inch around the neckline, the shoulder line and the armhole. I have my side seam allowance already on the pattern and I added ½ inch to the down parts to join to the skirts. And on the skirt part as well, I added ½ inch to the top and to the bottom. I cut my lining piece first before transferring to the lace fabric. Then for the back pattern as well, I added my allowance too. I added ½ inch around the neckline, the shoulder line and the armhole. I have my seam allowance, my side seam allowance there already. Then I added ½ inch to the down part, and on the skirt pattern as well, I added ½ inch to the top and to the bottom. So I'll start joining my pieces together now. So I'm going to remove my pattern from my fabric. If you are working with a satin, a doffet satin for your lining, you are going to place the wrong side of your lining facing the right side of the fabric. So by the time you sew it and you turn it to the right side, the shining parts will be facing the wrong side. Then I'll go ahead and stitch the neckline with ½ inch. I'm going to stitch the neckline with ½ inch and the sides, the two sides, I'll stitch it with ½ inch. Then for the skirt part as well, the same thing applies to the skirt part as well. Wrong side of the lining facing the right side of the lace. Then I will stitch the sides with ½ inch. Both sides of the skirts, I'll stitch them with ½ inch. I won't be stitching the down part or the upper part. I'll be stitching just the sides. Then for the back pieces as well, the same thing applies to the back as well. So I'm going to place one side of the back. I'm going to place the lining, wrong side of the lining facing the right side of the fabric like that. Then I'll stitch the neckline, the zipper side and the side of the dress with ½ inch. Same thing to the other side. I'll place my lining the same way and I'll stitch the neckline, the zipper side and the side of the seam, side seam also with ½ inch. Make sure you pin down your fabric to lining so it won't be shifting. Make sure you pin them down very well. Then the same thing applies to the skirts as well, the back skirts. I'm going to place my lining and fabric together. Then I will stitch the zipper side and the side seam of the skirts. I won't be stitching the upper parts or the down parts. I'll be stitching just the side seam and the zipper side with ½ inch. So this is it after I was done sewing. Then I'm going to turn it to the right side now. I've gone ahead to join the pieces together. So I'm going to turn them to the right side now. So the next thing I'm going to do after turning them to the right side is, for the skirt part, I'm going to stitch down the upper part and the down part just to keep the fabric and lining in one piece. Same with the bodies, I will stitch the down parts of the bodies so to keep it in place. The skirt part, I'll stitch the upper part and the down part, and the bodies, I'll stitch the down part just to keep them in one piece, just like I did for this one. I went ahead to stitch down the down parts like that, so to keep the fabric and lining in one place so it won't be shifting around. So this is it after I was done stitching. Then I went ahead to iron all the pieces down. I ironed them flat. The next thing I'm going to do now is to sew my darts. I'll go ahead to sew my darts now. So all I did was to place my front bodies. I folded it into two. Then I'm going to place my pattern paper on it, just like that. Then I'll mark my darts on the fabric. So I'm just marking my darts with a chalk. Then I placed a pin at the point where my dart is starting from. Then I'm going to use a chalk to mark the points. Then I use a chalk to mark the points like that. Then I'll mark it on the other side as well. So that is the point where my dart is going to start from. Then I'm going to remove my paper like that. Then I went ahead to draw my dart. Then I'll do that to the other side as well. So that's the point I'm going to sew for my dart. Then I'm going to repeat the process for every part that I have my darts on. I've gone ahead to sew my darts here. Then the next thing I will do now is to join my bodies to the skirt parts. So I'm going to place them right side facing each other. I'm going to pin them down and I'll stitch with 1/2 inch allowance. Then I'll do the same thing to the back part as well. I'm going to stitch the skirt part to the top part with my 1/2 inch allowance. Make sure you use your pins to pin them down so the dart line can align. After joining the bodies to the skirts, the next thing I'll do is to join the zipper allowance. Remember, we left 1.5 inches for the zipper allowance, but we already turned with lining. We already made use of 1/2 inch to turn with our lining, so we'll be left with 1 inches. So what I'll do is to mark 1 inch from the top to the skirt part. This is after you must have joined your bodies to the skirt parts. Then you mark 1 inch downward for your zipper allowance, and you're going to close your zipper allowance line. So this is it after I was done sewing, and I went ahead to iron my seam opened. My back part also is in one piece, so I went ahead to iron them, my seam opened. So the next thing I will do now is to join my front and back at the shoulder. I'm going to join them at the shoulder with my 1/2 inch allowance. I just stitch that fabric to fabric, lining to lining. I'll stitch that with 1/2 inch. I'll do that to the other side as well. I'll stitch with my 1/2 inch allowance. Then I'm going to move to the down parts, which is the gathers part now. All I'll do is to measure what I have from one side like that. I'll measure it round to the other side. I have about 30 inches there. So all I did was to multiply the 30 inches I have there by 2.5 inches. that would be 75 inches. So all I did was to cut a fabric that is about 75 inches in width, and to get the length, the full length of the dress I'm making is 42 inches. Then for the basque effects, I already cut out 31 inches from the shoulder to where my basque is stopping is 31 inches. So all I did was to subtract the 31 inches I have there from the 42 inches I want my length to be. So I'll be left with 11 inches. So the length of the fabric I'm to cut out for my gathers will be 11 inches. Then I'm going to add 1.5 inches to the 11 inches. That will be 12.5 inches. Half inch to join to the dress and 1 inch to hem the down part of the fabric. So that is what I'm going to cut out. I'm going to be cutting out a fabric that the length is 12.5 and the width is 75 inches. So I've gone ahead to cut out my fabric. So I cut out the front separately and the back separately. So what I have here is 75 inches in width and 12.5 inches in length for the front, and I cut the same thing for the back as well. Then I cut out the same width for my lining pieces as well. The only difference is that my lining piece is about 3 inches shorter than the fabric. My lining pieces is shorter than the fabric by 3 inches. So that is the only difference I have there. I'll go ahead to hem the down part of my lining, and I'll hem the down part of my fabric as well. So I've gone ahead to hem my fabric and lining at the down part. I'll go ahead to gather my fabric and lining separately. I'll gather it to the width I want them to be. So this is it. I've gone ahead to gather my fabric, as you can see. I'll go ahead to join my gathers to the main dress now. So I'll place it right side, facing right side of my lace fabric like that, and I'll stitch that down with my half-inch allowance. Then after stitching that, I'll turn it to the wrong side. And I'll join my lining piece as well, right side facing right side of the dress, just like that. So by the time I sew that down, the rough part will be in between the fabric and the lining. So this is it after I was done sewing. I've done the same thing to the back pieces as well, and I've joined them at the shoulders. You can see it's looking neat now. The rough edges is covered, is in between, as you can see. Then the next thing we are going to do now is to join our dress at the side. I'm going to be joining my dress with 1 inch side seam allowance. Remember, we left 1.5 inches for our side seam allowance, but we already turned our fabric and lining with 1/2 inch, so we'll be left with 1 inch side seam allowance. So what I'll do now is to join my side seam with 1 inch allowance. So this is it. After I was done joining, I've gone ahead to join the sides. The next thing I'll do now is to fix my zipper. So I went ahead to lose my zipper allowance line, and my zipper will be stopping 8 inches below my waistline. So I'm going to fix my zipper there. My zipper is stopping 8 inches below the waistline. Then I'll move to the sleeve part now. So I'll be making use of my basic sleeve pattern. I have my basic sleeve pattern here. All I did was to divide my sleeve into 4. Then I connected it to the upper parts like that, and I labeled them. All I did was to cut them out like that, and I'll be placing that on my fabric. I don't really have much fabric left, so I'm just making do with what I have left here. If you have more fabric, you can spread as much as you want. So my fabric is on fold. Then I'm going to pin down my pattern paper. I'm going to pin them down to the fabric, and I made sure I left about ½ inch allowance at the top of my fabric. So I pinned down my pattern to the fabric, and I have about 2 inches in between them, like that. If you have more fabric, you can spread as much as you want, but I'm just making use of what I have here. So I'm just managing what I have left here. You can have about 4 to 5 inches spacing depending on how much fabric you have. So I'm just making use of what I have here. And the total length of the sleeve I have here is about 15 inches. You can have more depending on how much fabric you have. So I add about ½ inch allowance to the top of the sleeve to join to the armhole of my dress, and I'm going to cut out. So the total length I have here is about 15 inches. I'm going to remove my pattern from the fabric. So I'll go ahead to hem the down parts of my sleeve for my elastic. So I've hemmed the down part of my sleeve, and I'm going to be passing my elastic through the casing. So I'll be passing my elastic with my safety pin. I'll be passing that on the down part of the sleeve. And I'm going to secure the end with a pin, and I'll stitch the side of my sleeve with 1 inch side seam allowance. I'll stitch the side. Then I'm going to pleat the upper part to the armhole of my dress, and that will be all for this dress. So this is the final outcome of my dress. You can see how beautiful it's looking like. So what I would have done differently for this dress is I would have loved to make my gathered parts to be longer, but I just made use of what I have left. So if you're a plus size like me, I would recommend you make use of about 4 yards or 3.5 yards of fabric so that your gathered parts can be longer. But if you like it like this, it's totally fine. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do not forget to subscribe, like, and share my videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.